So hello and good evening, wherever you are. It would be great, as usual. Oh yes, I want to welcome everyone who's joining us for the live event, and I'd like to really welcome everyone who's joining us for this chat later on in time as well. You're equally welcome. There's obviously a little bit of a time lag before your comments show up this end. But when you join the broadcast, please do type in and say hello and let us know where in the world you are, where you're joining us from. I'm joining you this evening, as usual, from Brighton, where we had big thunderstorms last night and we've had lots of rain this afternoon too. How about you, Simon? You are joining us from Lewis, and I'm shortly about to bring in Linda Jane McCurrach, who is a student on our School of Celebrancy courses currently. She's also a working celebrant. She's a doula, and she has set up No One Dies Alone Ayrshire. So we're going to be talking about that this evening. And without further ado, I'm going to bring Linda into the conversation. Hello, Linda.
Hi River, hi everyone. Thanks for
So,
inviting me on.
are you joining us from Ayrshire this evening?
Yes, yeah.
And it
The
looks as though it
weather's
might
not that
be
good.
a bit rainy where you are too.
Yeah.
So, hello, David, who's joining us from Arden, Delaware. From to Beth, who's also in Ayrshire. Hello, Debs, joining us from Caerphilly. Oh, of course, you're over here at the moment. Debs is usually having to join these broadcasts at an unearthly hour from the other end of the planet, but she's over here with us in Britain at the moment. So, Linda, can you tell us a little bit, first of all, about the organisation No One Dies Alone Ayrshire? How long has it been going? How many volunteers do you have? And what do you do?
Okay, we've been going for 4 years in October already. We have 45 volunteers, 2 members of staff now, including myself, and 6 board members. We sit with people, well, initially it began just sitting with people who were dying in their final hours. And then we expanded over the years to include people from the moment of diagnosis who were feeling isolated and alone, and just offering some support then. We've always worked with people who have families as well, and quite often families feel isolated and alone. They're not sure what to expect. They don't really know the process, and just having somebody there that does know the process and knows what to expect can be a real comfort to people. And that was our initial ethos is just to be there at the moment of death. Then we expanded it. Now we've also added in a health walk and 2 bereavement groups, online support and bereavement support over lockdown. We started a telephone service as well as the bereavement support online. So yes, growing arms and legs.
Yeah, it has grown arms and legs. I was going to say, it sounds like it's really, really well established. And also that you're really kind of expanding out to really have like quite a wraparound program of support for dying people and their families. So just No One Dies Alone Ayrshire is one of many groups under that umbrella of No One Dies Alone, is that right?
Yeah, it's one of many groups or projects set up with the same name. And they were all started by a nurse in Oregon who was asked to sit with someone who was dying. And by the time she did her rounds and went back to the person, he had passed away. And it sat with her for years until a doctor heard her saying to a colleague she wanted to set up a team of volunteers to sit with people only who were dying.
Mm.
And he said, you need to do this, and supported her to do it. So they share their training with anyone who wants to set up a group. But we were lucky enough to have the training from Inverclyde. That was the first project in Scotland set up of NODA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So so Deborah's asking, basically what was going to be my next question. That sounds so beautiful and an honourable service. Deborah says, how did you even begin with doing that? So yeah, would you like to sort of tell us a bit
Yeah,
about your journey to
yes, absolutely. I
initiating this?
also forgot about two other parts of our expansion is we lots of the volunteers have done a course with Pushing Up the Daisies called After the Last Breath, and the volunteers who are involved with this part of the service are experienced nurses who have done this before, and that is helping family members to lay out their loved one after death. So we're offering that service now too. And we have another volunteer, Helen, who has set up a care package for people who are dying called Sandy's Toolbox, with some practical items and some self-care items in it as well. So more details can be found on our website. But yeah, I set up, I'd heard about No One Dies Alone when my mum was dying. And it just always stuck in my mind that it wouldn't have been in my mum and dad's consciousness to have my mum at home if I hadn't been there. And I just thought how sad that was that, people who don't want to particularly die in hospital or in the hospice, they want to be at home, can't really always have that choice. So that was my kind of main priority. I wanted to put my skills as a sole midwife to good use as well. But I really just wanted to make sure nobody felt alone, that they didn't have a choice.
And do you find there's you've got 45 volunteers? That's a lot of volunteers, and that's
Yeah,
covering the whole county. And can you tell
yeah.
us a little bit about who your volunteers are and what kind of support you give them? I'm wondering if Beth is one of your volunteers, because she says that also support all volunteers really well.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, she must be. Hi, Beth. Yeah, the volunteers are fantastic. Many are ex-healthcare professionals, or they're still working in the field, and they've just saw how desperately the project was needed in the first place. I didn't even really know that myself before we started. But we've got a whole range. We've got someone who built aircrafts, someone else who worked in a bank. The main thing is all the volunteers are kind. That's the main thing that they have. They go above and beyond what is expected of them. And we've retained almost all of our volunteers over lockdown because they're
Wow.
passionate about the cause as well.
Wow. So what happens if somebody volunteers? Do they need to have particular skills? Do they just, as long as they just feel the calling, you'll take them on board?
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
what happens if
more or
somebody
less.
volunteers?
'Cause, yeah,
Yeah.
more or less anybody who's drawn to the work. Apparently, it's all about our limbic system,
Okay.
the primal part of our brain, how we handle death or dying, whether we want to sit with someone or whether we want to be with someone who is dying or who has died. Is how we're hot-wired with the primal part of our brain. So all of the volunteers are hot-wired in that way. But the same goes for if someone doesn't want to see their loved one after they've died. They're wired in another way, and that's absolutely fine as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
So yeah, could you tell us about what happens when someone volunteers for NODA? Do they then do a course, or you train
Yeah,
them by mentoring, or what happens?
yeah, both. We have the companion course that kind of prepares for those who haven't sat with anyone yet, kind of prepares them as much as we can for what to expect. Then we offer TLC training, which is kind of training. It's a little bit more touchy-feely, and it's used by NHS Dorset and approved by the National Council for Palliative Care. It helps care homes to get their gold standards. So we offer that to other organisations, to the volunteers and to family members and general public. The volunteers have regular companion support meetings. We just had a retreat at the end of August there, and we all went away and did some self-care, and someone looked after us all for the
Yeah.
day, and we had a really great time focusing on our self-care. It's quite a few tears of happiness that day. It was great. We have peer support after everyone supports someone. They have a debrief with another person who has supported the same person. They offer each other peer support. I have regular clinical supervision, and my colleague and I, Laura, have reflective practice in place. So yeah,
Great.
lots of support. We're always trying to offer continuous professional development as well, with different courses and
Yeah.
things to interest the volunteers, and
Yeah.
that is related to the work, and sometimes not as much. It's just for general interest as well.
I mean,
Yeah.
this.
Wonderful team.
Oh, sorry, Linda, I spoke over you then.
That's okay.
Um,
I'm just saying they're a wonderful team.
You're a wonderful team. I'm just listening to you and I'm just reflecting. Well, firstly, I just want to acknowledge that in a way, this is a sort of slightly tangential subject to celebrancy, but it just seemed so much a part of the conversation that we've touched on in these broadcasts before, the sort of wider conversation that we have about death and dying and how that's seen and talked about and dealt with um, in our communities and in our wider society.
Yeah,
And this organisation is obviously, a big part of that. And also for you, it sits alongside your celebrancy work and your doula work. I wonder
yeah,
if you could reflect a little bit about, on how those pieces all fit together for you.
yeah. The soul midwifery fits in with the celebrancy nicely for the ritual that is death, really, the process that we all go through, and some of the skills that soul midwives use at those times are very tie in with the celebrancy. For example, anointing a loved one who's passing away, using sacred herbs or oils. Those are all quite ceremonial
Yeah.
work, shifting the energy at a deeper level that we can't even really comprehend. That's very beautiful work, and quite hard to articulate as well some of the amazing experiences that happen when you pull out an oil to help, like Fragonia, that helps with transformation of any kind. But somebody who's transitioning just really helps them to let go, and
Yeah.
feeling the subtle shifts in the room as these things happen
Wow.
is very, very kind of ceremonial.
So,
Another word for it. Very beautiful.
it sounds very, very profound, actually,
Yeah, absolutely.
and obviously for you and for your volunteers, these kinds of experiences become part of your normal. Whereas for most people in our societies and communities, those kinds of experiences are way out of the
Yeah,
ordinary, aren't they? And they're things that few of us get to experience. And I,
yeah,
I think we can all kind of imagine um, times when those kind of processes would have been much more held, by family communities.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
Um,
It's I
After
forgot
you,
I was
Linda.
going to say something there, but yes, just that there's so much that we don't speak about. I really
Mm,
feel that quite strongly. There's so much that needs spoken about with the process, basically, of death and dying. And quite often people ask, that I'm not. They'll say, "I'm not afraid. I just really want to
mhm.
know where I'm going. I just really need to
Yes,
know that." And
yes,
nobody can say for absolute certain. So that's the first thing usually we would say. Well, nobody knows for certain, but we've got a little tool you could use that would help. And I now speak quite openly. I will say, instead of you know, when you're in and out of consciousness, I will say, when you're coming in and out of your body, you will sense the movement as you're coming in and out of your body, and you can give your mind something to focus on then.
yeah,
So, one man that I said that to recently, and I explained about a walk along the beach, going further and further each time he travelled out, or up in a hot air balloon, going higher and higher each time. He just knew exactly. He was like, "I'll tell you where I'm going, hen. I go in my horse every time I shut my eyes. I'm not even sleeping. I shut my eyes, I'm on my horse, I'm away out into the desert. And every time I do, I've been going further and further." And then he kind of made an excuse. He says, "Well, I am a Western fan, so it's maybe just that." But
oh,
yeah, he had his visualization. So we were
well,
visualizing that afterwards.
I think this brings us on to a sort of topic that you and I have discussed privately before, Linda, which it was, you know, you said that it was your mum's death that had sort of led
Mm,
you, inspired you to um, begin, you know, on this path. Um,
mm.
and you explained that you had had what you described as a shared death experience around the time
Yeah.
of your mum's passing. Would you be happy to share that story?
Yes. Yeah. I feel shared death experiences. I've been kind of trying to find out a wee bit more about them. And I feel a near death experience is absolutely seems to change people's lives. But a shared death experience, which seems to be getting more common, seems to be changing a whole lot of community and people all round about. So my mum had the hospital bed in the living room, and my daughter hadn't been to see her yet. I was with her for 3 weeks since she got out of the hospital until she passed away. After the first few days, when I went home for a visit, there was a picture that at the time, my partner had said, "Draw Granny a dolphin." And my son and my daughter had drew and together this dolphin. Um, my mum asked for it to be pinned up on the wall at the end of her bed, and she was blown away by this picture. She went on and on about it every couple of days. How did she know to do that? I want to know how she knew to do that. And but she would never elaborate. I was like, "Mum, what is it?" And at the time of her passing, I closed my eyes. I was sitting by her bedside. And when I closed my eyes, I saw her very, very vividly and very clearly. It was like a cinema picture behind my eyes. It wasn't like it usually would be when I was meditating or anything. This was something I hadn't experienced before. And she was younger, and she was rowing really, really fast out of the mouth of the River Irvine out into the sea or towards the sea. And I opened my eyes and I thought instantly, trying to take credit for my mum's visualization, I think. I says, "Oh, she would never, there's no way she would she was terrified of water, absolutely terrified. She tried so hard when my sons were little to go, she went for swimming lessons and everything because she tried very hard to get into the baby pool with them. And she did, but she was much more comfortable sitting at the side of the baby pool. That was how terrified she was of the water after being thrown in to swim when she was a kid. So there was no way she was getting in the water. So I opened my eyes and blinked a few times and closed them again. And this time, the exact same from the same spot. And she was rowing. And I thought, that's very strange. When I opened my eyes this time, I thought, maybe that is what she's visualising. Why? I just need to go with this. So I closed my eyes again, and this time she was going really, really fast. And she went really fast right out into and it was a kind of dull kind of day, right out into the mouth of the river, and dolphins surrounded the boat, and a golden light came down and lifted all the dolphins in the boat up. And I was blown away because I knew when I looked at her then, I saw the lights above her head, and I knew she was out of her body, and this was her getting ready to go. And it was a few weeks later before my dad says, do you want this picture the Wayne is drawn for your mother? And when I looked at it, I thought, oh, that's the dolphins. And that was the moment, not at the time, but that was the moment I recognised all the time she had said, what was that? You know, how did she know about to draw that? And that was when I realised that was what she had been visualising all the time, but she wouldn't speak about it. But all the kind of visualisations I was trying to give her, you know, what about a walk through the Bluebell Woods, Mum? You used to love talking about that. She's going, no. So that sparked a whole load of memories. And what about going across a field of flowers? Oh, no, remember the time my brother said that a bull was coming and your auntie, Auntie Prunella and I had to run across the field. So, you know, that was sparking up lots of conversations as well. But this one, she just didn't talk about. It was like, I think she must have thought in her mind, if I can do that, if I can get in that water, I'll be all right. And there's nothing to be scared of after that.
Oh, it sounds like a really just a profound and beautiful experience for
Yeah, it was the
yourself
feeling of
personally.
it
And
as well. Yeah, the feeling of it was amazing.
yeah, and this whole idea of offering people or suggesting to them a visualization, this strikes me as being such an inclusive thing, because although, you know, the way that you've told this story, you know, you obviously kind of see that in the framework of your worldview and your beliefs, but it seems that
Yeah,
it's something that is very accessible for people to just
yeah,
experience on their own terms, whether they just see it as a, you know, a helpful form of meditation, or whether
yeah,
they see it as actually, you know, being able to visualize where they're actually going, and, you know, that there's a potential that others can share that experience with them.
yeah.
Is it something that most people that you work with are open to, that idea?
Yeah, definitely. There comes a stage where we've got to let go of our beliefs, whatever those beliefs are.
Mm,
And up until recently, I didn't really recognise that not having a belief is a belief system.
yes.
So they've got to let go of that as well, and seem to do so naturally because they're like, well, I just don't know. I'm a way to find out. I just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. And they have experienced the shift in the energy and the feeling of leaving their body and coming back in the body by that time as well.
Yeah. Yeah. This is really interesting that Hannah's saying she's actually already written her own visualization, which she would like to be read to her on her deathbed if possible.
Oh, lovely, lovely. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I just want to reel back a little bit to, some of the practicalities that Debs is asking about what happens. Yeah, this question here where Debs says, if one was to embark on this service, where would they start and what duties would be expected at first? So, yeah.
Okay, does she mean with Noda
I think it,
Ayrshire or sole
yes, yes, I think,
midwifery
yeah,
or
yes. I think
okay,
with Noda Ayrshire, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I
okay,
don't say it
that's
as
okay.
beautifully as you do.
Well, first and foremost, kindness, like we spoke about. Then there's an
Mm,
application form to fill in, a PG disclosure to apply for, with an interview in between those two, and then the training, and then volunteers who are just starting, who would like to go to their first session of support, whether it's vigiling or whether it's support early on in the person's journey. They can go with another volunteer, or myself, or someone will go
mm,
out with them. And that's all that's really expected of them. There's no set time that they have to volunteer each month. It was quite difficult to get the volunteers to accept the self-care retreat that we were trying to offer them, because they were like, well, I've only sat with one person, or I've not sat with very many. And some were saying, well, I haven't sat with anybody yet. Oh, you're still on standby, you're still there, you're still part of the team, you know.
mm,
So yeah, there's no obligation at all. Having everyone ready
yeah.
is fantastic. Mhm.
I mean, it's great to hear about that your self-care retreat and everything that you said, about you have clinical supervision and the way that you're um, the support around the volunteers works and the mentoring, the
Mm,
buddying, the debriefing, all of that sounds so fantastic. And again, it's something that's been touched on in these discussions before. Um, that that in the celebrancy world, these things it's not a thing yet, and
mm,
I sort of feel that yeah, it really ought to be really. We're as
yeah.
celebrants, we're dealing a lot um, with
Hmm.
funerals and with bereaved people and
Yeah.
highly volatile emotional situations. There are ways that we can deal with that and support ourselves, but to have those kind of structures would be really great. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think in the celebrancy
Yeah, I
world.
did think that the first time I saw from the point of view of training to be a celebrant, when I shadowed
Mm,
another celebrant, Rachel, um,
mm,
locally, and I was there to watch what she was doing, and to feel the grief of all of these people. It was a wee bit different from what I was doing. I was
mm,
holding the grief for family, for one or two people, for the person that was dying. But to have a large group like that, I thought, wow, that really is quite a lot to hold.
mm,
And I did wonder, I thought, will that be okay? I had to question myself then on it,
mm,
just enough to make sure, I was going to be okay with that. And of course, yeah, having the right support in is crucial.
mm.
Mhm.
And as you've found on the course, that's where we start from right at the beginning is,
Mhm.
the idea of your celebrant's prayer, which, most people are
Mhm.
comfortable thinking of it as a prayer. Other people might want to put some different language around it, but just this idea of calling in what holds you and feeling
Mhm.
held in order that you
Yeah,
can hold space for others.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, back to no doubt. Again, some really interesting questions. Hannah's saying so many people actually die alone in care homes. I think this would be a great service there. Is it something that's offered in care
Yeah.
homes as well?
Yeah. We I know in Inverclyde they work in care homes. There's there was two pilot projects. We started one in Irvine and one in Fenwick in two care homes, and they were very open to having us in to help. I think it would be ideal. The more people that hear about us, yeah, we could really help there as well. Yeah.
Which kind of brings me on to, I was going to ask you about the demand for your service and how people hear about it, and what is the level of demand like? There's obviously plenty of people that
Mm.
are volunteering.
Mhm.
Um, is it more than enough for the demand that you're getting at the moment? How do people hear about it, and what sort of people get in touch with you?
Yeah, anyone can make a referral. Anyone can get in touch. Family members or other healthcare professionals. It's mainly we do a lot of advertising, but it is really mainly word of mouth is the main kind of way. Marie Curie have been helping us and telling a lot of people about us when they can't offer overnight support, especially. We've had quite a few complaints from people like, why have I not heard about this? Like I could really have, you really could have helped me 6 months ago and things like that. But it's difficult when there's there's only two members of staff. Yeah,
Mm,
we're getting there.
yeah. So that was obviously quite a lot of work, to get to where you've got to at the moment, with
Mm.
the two two members of staff. And so, are your staff roles around volunteer coordination and support? And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
expanding the services as well as running
yeah,
the bereavement groups.
yeah,
Yeah, and trying to let people know about us. And we did quite a lot early on, meeting with healthcare teams and stuff. And then online, it was mainly other third sector organisations. We were trying to spread the word and visiting all the volunteer forums monthly and different meetings and all the different things we were trying to do at the time before lockdown had to be halted during
yeah.
lockdown, all the coffee mornings and all the rest of it. So, yeah, this
And
is
and
us just
it's
really getting back into it now and out in the
and
community again.
it sounds as though probably you put in a lot of hours of unpaid work in
Mm.
order to build the organisation to the point
Mhm.
at which that you can um,
Yeah,
be, begin to be um, paid for some of the work that you do to make it sustainable for you, really, and for everyone
yeah,
else. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Um, are I know you can't really speak about, there's obviously sort of confidentiality issues
Mm.
to. Uh, are there any sort of stories that you can share about, this work, or experience of it over the last 4 years, that could sort of just
Mm.
give people a flavour of, what it can mean to
Yeah.
pan out?
Mhm. Well, one of the people that I worked with recently um, was beautiful family and very supportive. They were all there for the mum who was dying, and she was very verbal about the fact she was very frightened, and they didn't know how to help her with that and what to do. So they were reached out, and I went to visit and told her about the visualisation, which sparked lots of conversation around what would be the best. And the mum opened her eyes and said what would be the best before she closed them again because she was quite um, within herself at that time. She was listening to everything, but she wasn't really speaking all that much.
Yeah.
I had taken down a singing bowl. So I rang the singing bowl, and the family were absolutely delighted in the fact that her breathing completely changed, and she seemed to be so much more relaxed. And just having giving the mind something to focus on, really explaining that this was a stage and it would change. This was a stage that everyone went through.
Mm.
Um, that night, I was in 3 days in a row, and that night, the family put on singing bowls, and it had the same response of her breathing deepening and her relaxing. And they
Mm.
had some conversation around visualization, around the fact that it was a stage, and how was she feeling now? She's feeling a little bit better. The sound just clears everything in a way that is hard to comprehend as well. It's hard to articulate. So that was working its magic too.
Mm.
The next day I had a few more singing bowls, and the third day I took more singing bowls. And this time she was out in the garden. They had wheeled her out into the garden, and the family were absolutely delighted. They says at this stage, and given what was happening before, um, I had visited, they really didn't expect to be making beautiful memories with their mum, and they were
Mm.
delighted with that. And I think sometimes we're so caught up in the loss and the grief around death and dying that we forget that it is a beautiful experience, and it can be a beautiful experience. It should be a beautiful experience. And even if there's been a difficult process um, building up to the death itself, it still can be beautiful at that point. So yeah, that was one of the stories anyway.
Oh, thank you so much
Loads.
for sharing that, Linda. Yeah, that it's just wonderful to hear that. Yeah, that it's really stepping right through that. We seem to have this. I'm imagining it as a sort of, I don't know, a kind of barbed wire fence that we all have around death. You know, that we're
Yeah.
such a death phobic society. We've definitely said this before in these chats. You know, that fear for everybody.
Yeah.
For families to be able to talk about what's happening for the person themselves. Um, it can be just such a huge barrier, and it's just wonderful to hear that you seem to, through the techniques that you use with Noda, you just have ways to just traverse through that
Yeah.
barrier and take
Yeah.
people with you, beyond that place of fear.
I
Um,
wonder sometimes if it is as simple as just the intention,
yeah,
because all the volunteers have the intention of going in and providing comfort,
yes.
and that's what they absolutely provide.
Mm,
And just giving people space to just breathe, and everything's going to be okay. You know,
mm,
and
yeah,
at some level we know that anyway. But
yeah.
we get caught up, as I said, with the loss and with the expectations, with what has been said that should happen or shouldn't happen, and
Mm,
that's reflected in the way we grieve as well. I shouldn't be feeling like this after all these months
mm,
or all these years. It's like, who says
yeah,
I should be feeling like this? I shouldn't be feeling like that.
yeah.
And
No,
I
very.
think a lot of it comes from um, where we are in general, not always, and the tide is shifting with that as well. But in general, we're quite disconnected from embracing all of our emotions, all of our feelings,
Mm,
and not just the good ones.
Yeah.
And I think that's reflected in the death process as well.
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
Lampard report that came out in November is a worldwide report that looks at how cultures all over the world deal with death and dying, and very made a point that death doulas, so midwives, have a place to play in
Mm.
turning this around
Yeah.
and really opening up to the spiritual care and the emotional care of the dying, and not just the physical
Yeah.
side. As
Yeah.
people hear the word spiritual, they think religion still, rather than energy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, tide is definitely turning.
Yeah.
What is happening at a strategic level is so inspiring. It's wonderful, but
Mm.
there's still a big gap between people's perceptions and what's happening at a grassroots level, and the individuals who
Mm.
are making these strategies still have their own, um, feelings around the whole subject that they have
Yeah.
to get through as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all part of the process.
Yeah. This is really, really great to hear, Linda. It's lovely to hear you talking about, spiritual care as well, and that spiritual care is something that can be offered and received, again, as we've said, regardless of belief or non-belief.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
When I first started, I wanted to change the world, and
mm,
a bit disheartened that, oh, wait a wee minute, like this is taking ages.
yeah,
But then, slowly over the years, I've learned it's not really about changing the world. It's just about changing a few
yeah,
people who will change another few people's way of thinking, who will change another few people's way of thinking, and it
mm.
kind of spreads like that.
Yeah, it's really lovely to sort of hear, how this kind of, these sensory experiences are so much an important part of this spiritual care as
Mm,
well.
yeah.
And as I was listening to you talking about, your use of the singing bowls, and I'm connecting that with, how you talked about, that the profundity of that process of anointing with
Yeah.
oils as well. And
Mm.
even also, the visualization is also sort of appealing to the senses, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's just reminding me of, when I talk to people on the courses about when we write blessings, that we use
Mhm.
language that kind of appeals to those senses, because then we get through
Yeah.
to a different part of the
Mhm.
brain.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Mhm.
it's sort of going past that sort of rational, analytical, and just
Yeah.
really getting into this sort of I think it's the limbic system, isn't it, as you said, and
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
those more kind of instinctive, intuitive, um,
Yeah. And
ways of
so many different levels that is happening, with the person anyway. So it's just kind of catching the physical sensory
yeah,
experience up with all the rest of it, and
yeah,
rebalancing the
yeah,
whole.
yeah,
Because it is a very sensory experience, as some senses close down, others become heightened.
yeah, yeah.
And with the
So, Deb,
hearing being the last to go.
yes, people often say that, don't
Yeah.
they? Yeah.
Yeah, you could hear a
I've
way
often,
down in the next room or a way down the corridor, things that you
mm,
would never believe that they could hear. You can
yeah,
hear.
amazing. Um, Another very practical question from Deb's there. How do you work out how much time to spend with someone?
Yeah, it's very intuitive, very intuitive. And sometimes there's no person's not verbal. So if we were sitting with someone and we had already had a cup of tea, but we, as soon as we sat down, were getting that we wanted a cup of tea. That could
Mm,
be the person trying to say, I wish you would just go out and get a cup of tea. so that they could slip away quietly by themselves. So we're
Mm,
always on the lookout for that, for the intuitive kind of signs that they've
mhm,
had enough.
mm,
Even if they are verbal, they might not say, you can go now.
mm,
Some do. They say, right, I'm just going to have a wee sleep pen, and they will retreat into their own space again. But others won't, and so you've got to kind of pay close attention to the body signals or anything that you're sensing yourself, and that
mm.
just seems to happen so naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this work does seem to be, profoundly intuitive, really. And there's
Yeah.
something, um, all the while that you're talking about this process as well, there seems, I'm just feeling the words slow and patient, and
Mm,
it's as if
yeah.
everything must slow down, and
Yeah.
there's nobody can put an agenda on any of this, can they? It's
Yeah.
a
And some of
process.
the volunteers have
Yeah,
commented on that. The
yeah,
fact that it's one of the few times in their own life that they do slow down and just have time to be is when
mm,
they're sitting with someone that they're supporting.
mm,
So they value that space for themselves as well.
mm.
To being present.
It's very beautiful, beautiful work, Linda. It's just, yeah,
Thank you.
really deeply
It's an
moving to
honour.
hear about. And I really hope that some people who are watching, listening, with us live, or perhaps later on, might feel inspired to find out if there's a NODA service, in your locality, or if there isn't, maybe somebody might even feel, fired up from hearing about this, to get something going.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to help with any new projects setting up. Always happy to help with that.
Oh, thank you so much, Linda. That's a really generous offer too. It looks, by the looks of it, yeah, Debs has been very inspired by this, and may well
Should
be
I
getting in touch with you by the looks of things.
put the website address in?
Oh yes, that would be great. Yeah, please do put the website address in the chat so that people know how to get in touch. Um, I am going to bring our time together this evening, or whatever time of day it is where you are, and when you're joining us. I'm going to bring our time together to a close now, with some words from this beautiful book, which this was the subject of our very first School of Celebrancy live broadcast. Benedict is by John O'Donoghue, and I'm going to read John's beautiful Blessing for the Dying. May death come gently towards you, leaving you time to make your way through the cold embrace of fear to the place of inner tranquility. May death arrive only after a long life, to find you at home among your own, with every comfort and care you require. May your leave-taking be gracious, enabling you to hold dignity through awkwardness and illness. May you see the reflection of your life's kindness and beauty in all the tears that fall for you. As your eyes focus on each face, may your soul take its imprint, drawing each image within as companions for the journey. May you find for each one you love a different locket of jeweled words to be worn around the heart to warm your absence. May someone who knows and loves the complex village of your heart be there to echo you back to yourself and create a sure word raft to carry you to the further shore. May your spirit feel the surge of true delight when the veil of the visible is raised and you glimpse again the living faces of departed family and friends. May there be some beautiful surprise waiting for you inside death, something you never knew or felt, which with one simple touch absolves you of all loneliness and loss, as you quicken within the embrace for which your soul was eternally made. May your heart be speechless at the sight of the truth of all your belief had hoped, your heart breathless in the light and lightness where each and everything is at last its true self, within that serene belonging that dwells beside us on the other side of what we see.
Beautiful. Lovely.
Definite some echoes there of themes that we talking about
Yeah.
this evening. Oh, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you as always to those of you who've been leaving comments in the chat. It was always lovely when we're here, to know that we're not alone and that the conversation, is going back and forth with you out there. And I'm not certain yet what we'll be talking about next month, but it may be a discussion about hand fastings. We've got a new School of Celebrancy hand fastings course in the pipeline at the moment. But yes, we'll be posting in due course and look forward to seeing some of you again next month. And wherever you are, whenever you're joining us, bright blessings on your
Yeah.
journey ahead. Thanks again
Bye,
for the time
everyone.
you shared with
Thanks,
us.
River. Thank you.
Bye bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.